want to talk a little bit about the problem the Democratic Party is having right now with being labeled as the woke party. Now, as I've talked about in my previous segments about this, and we're not going to do a full deep dive and everything I feel about that. If you want to hear more, go watch the Barack Obama video I did where he calls out kind of the more cancel culture-y part of the left, and I give my thoughts. But it is true that for the party that is really the only one proposing things that would materially help working people, it's disproportionately getting painted as something very different than that. So because the left generally, culturally, is attached to the Democratic Party is often assigned to the most weird kind of goofy parts of the left cultural movement. Now, in any country the size of ours, you're going to have different cultural movements come up, and you just, whatever, as long as they're not actually getting their hands on power and materially impacting people's lives, it's really not that big of a concern to me. But for some people, it really is. The college liberal who screams too much is the largest concern of the Republican Party and the right wing these days. And so because of that, it's almost like some people are forgetting that when you look at the two political parties, the Democratic Party is far from perfect, but they're the only one who have actually done things in the last, and I mean significant things. There's minor things the Republican Party has done that's good, but for the most part, the only party that has improved people's lives significantly in a material sense, even when talking just about economics and like the day-to-day reality of people there. And so that's true. Plus, historically, if you think about any government program that is just absolutely helping the average working American day-to-day, chances are it was passed by a Democratic action. You know, it was a Democratic push. And so the fact that that gets distracted from by this woke word, or this idea that the Democratic Party is only made up of college-educated people or whatever it is definitely getting in the way of a better coalition that we could build. So Tim Ryan kind of talks about this a little bit, where he gets told in the story he's telling by a Democratic strategist that we need to be reaching out more to college-educated people, and he's saying he doesn't like that message. Take a look.
Yesterday, in the Washington Post, there was a national Democratic consultant, high-level consultant.
Or he wasn't told, it was written in something he read. Apologies.
That said, we can't play in places like Ohio. We shouldn't really go after seats in places like Ohio. We got to go to the states that have more college-educated people. That pisses me off. That is an absolute slap in the face to everyone who's out there busting their ass who just may not have a college degree. And I will tell you something, I will not let the Democratic Party turn into a party where you have to go get a college degree as a passport to get into the party.
So one of the things that Tim Ryan is having to do a lot, because he is running in Ohio, which is kind of a red or maybe purplish state, is set himself as very different next to the rest of the Democrats. Otherwise, he's probably going to lose. He does have to kind of come off as something a little bit different so that he can get some of those center or center-right voters to vote for him. But I actually agree with his message there, even though on a lot of issues he's probably a little bit to the right of me. He's correct that while it's true more educated people tend to vote more liberal, it's not true that the message of the Democratic Party should only appeal, or does only appeal, to more educated people. Because while that's the trend you see, leaving everything out, if you add, which party is advocating for working people in a significant manner? It's the Democratic Party. The Republican Party wants to deregulate everything and wants to cut the taxes of those at the top a bunch. Now, you can have other conversations. They also want to scream about trans people all the time. But as far as economically what they're thinking and what we've seen them do, what does that do? Okay, when you just deregulate and you get the government out of the private sector completely, it allows the powerful people within the markets to become more powerful, consolidate more of their authority, and abuse the people below them in significant ways. And workers lose a lot of power. But when you have the government step in and enable workers to have more power and implement regulations that protect workers and try to have programs that give you some of your basic needs, that's actually what is helping the everyday worker, educated or not educated. And so making sure that we don't lose sight of that is so important, even though, yes, also our message should appeal to, college educated people. And I think anyone who's putting that message out there is dishonest or dumb, I guess, because the Republican Party really, in the policies we've seen them pass over the last 3 decades, is the party of the elites, is the party of the wealthy. Now, they trick people with cultural issues into voting for them. They trick people and they scream about trans people, so then a Republican voter thinks that's the biggest issue ever and they go to the polls based on it. But when you actually look at what they've done, they've just handed more powerful to those at the top. And it drives me insane that people forget that. A similar sort of question was posed to the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, more so about not educated or not educated, but is the Democratic Party becoming too woke? Here we go.
Some people say that you sound on some issues more like a Republican than a Democrat. Do you believe that your party has in some areas gone too far left and become too woke?
No, just to the contrary. I believe that the rank and file Democrat, we are radically practical. And the problem is that we try to highlight those who are on the extreme of both parties. The far extreme, I believe they have hijacked this country. They want us to believe that we want an overproliferation of guns in one far right, and the far left position that whomever is caught with a gun should not be arrested. So the violence we're seeing in our country and the overproliferation of guns, the co-conspirators are the far left and the far right. The everyday Americans in the middle, we are being impacted by that. And so I think it's...
So, few things. First of all, Eric Adams is another one of those people who, on a lot of issues, he would probably be to the right of me, would definitely be just like Tim Ryan, and is a little bit incorrect in his analysis, sort of, or at least the framing. But in the original response, the rank and file Democrats walking around today are very, very reasonable and actually are advocating for things that are just going to help people materially. But we get distracted with some of these more abstract conversations, which are still important, to be clear. But you have to put things on a priority list. And especially in national elections, some of the conversations that we spend so much time talking about that are purely social and cultural don't impact all the people's lives that are involved in national elections. And so you got to put things where they should go as far as your priorities are concerned. And so Eric Adams there, I don't know if the far left and the far right, not really. I think the biggest issue that's causing us to have a hard time taking proper action on gun control is 100% those who stand against any action whatsoever, because I know the farthest left person ever would be perfectly willing to do something that's not that far left as long as it means some gun regulation, whereas the furthest right person won't do anything. But on some things, you have a situation where both sides are kind of refusing to budge and we're not making progress. Now, I think the distinction that's not made is, what are we talking about when we say far left? Because the furthest left people in Congress, so let's say AOC, actually has a bunch of great economic proposals and programs that would benefit people's lives and is reasonable on the social conversations. So if we're talking about far left in a political, linear sense about policy, it's less applicable. If we're talking about culturally, are you completely, intolerant of people who have any different kind of cultural background than you, and if they don't know every little thing you know about this issue and that issue, then you hate them and they're horrible, then that makes sense. And I think Eric Adams is correct there, and they actually stand in the way of progress. So as the Democratic Party, again, we need to be open to anyone and everyone in the sense that if you don't come from the same background as us, if you're not checking these checklist items, but you're committed to the values we stand for, come along. Plus, we need to remember and remind people that our message is one of the working class as well as other people as well. So hopefully that makes sense to you. An interesting dynamic playing out within the Democratic Party.